afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Austin Allison. I'm the editor of Campaign Middle East, and you're joining us at our first digital event of 2021. It's really good to see everybody again, or at least to know that you're here. So I'm not going to stay on for very long because I've got two very competent panels ahead of me. The topic of this event is obviously Adtech, which is going to be, there's no doubt that Adtech was absolutely crucial in 2020, and it's going to be one of the key factors shaping our industry this year. We've got two fantastic panels ahead of us. The first one is going to be on programmatic after cookies. If you know what that's about, you'll know how important it is. If you don't know what it's about, then you're about to find out how important it is. And following that, stay tuned for creativity in ad tech. Definitely stay till the end. We've got two phenomenal panels and a lot of really good speakers, a lot of expertise here for you. So thanks, as always, to our sponsors. Sponsoring this and making this event possible are Digital Media Services, DMS, which is the official digital arm of Schwery Group. It represents over 30 market-leading websites across key verticals in the MENA region and beyond. MMP, or MMP Worldwide, is a leading premium global programmatic marketplace provider serving the MENA region and beyond with innovative tech solutions designed to make an impact. And Huawei Ads, the data footprint that combines both branded Huawei demand and external advertisers. Huawei Ads gives marketers exclusive access to a global pool of Huawei device users. These are the sort of top line information about the sponsors. We've got some of the experts from the sponsors on the panels as well. So I'm sure that we'll pick up a little bit extra about that. But thanks again to them for making this possible. And none of us would be here without them. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the first panel. The topic of this panel is programmatic after cookies. And speaking here, we have Therese Lundin, who is the MENA platform manager at Google. We have Mala Kamran, who is the head of advertising and demand solutions at Huawei Ads. And we have Romit Garat, who is the associate director of programmatic at MMP Worldwide. And moderating this panel is a man who knows a lot more about ad tech than me, Robert McGovern, who is a digital strategist at Horizontal Digital. So I'll let you take over from here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Austin. Thanks to all our panelists as well today. Yeah, so as Austin was saying, we'll be talking about the life after the third-party cookie. So third-party cookies is obviously been at the center of digital advertising for over 20 years now, pretty much since digital advertising as we know it began. For anyone who might not know how these work, just a quick overview because we want to be as inclusive as possible. So first-party cookies are what websites place in a user's browser to kind of remember whether they're logged in, what's in their shopping cart, what pages they visited, and things like that. And these are going to work as normal going forward. And with third-party cookies, they're placed in a user's browser and share data about their behaviors as they move across the web from site to site. And these facilitate ad targeting and retargeting and a whole bunch of other stuff. And over the last few years, a bunch of different regulations and changes have been implemented that have marginalized the effectiveness of third-party cookies, basically. And this is going to continue over the next year or two. So things like Google dropping support for third-party cookies in the Chrome browser, Apple's latest iOS update that requires apps to ask for users permission to collect and share their data. So it's an opt-in rather than an opt-out, which is a big change. Even Gdpr that was introduced back in 2018. So all of these things have an impact on the way digital advertising works and how effective it can be. And that's what we're here to discuss today. So primarily how these changes will affect different players in the space. So on one side, you have the advertisers trying to reach as many eyeballs as possible for as cheap as possible. They're trying to get as much data and transparency as possible. On the other side, you have the publishers, like the media companies that are increasingly kind of battling it out with the platforms like Google and Facebook for ad dollars. Then you also have the matchmakers, if you like, in the middle, the demand side platforms and the supply side platforms, and increasingly gatekeepers like the mobile operating systems as well in the middle here. And then at the center of it all, you have the users who are increasingly conscious of privacy and how they're being kind of tracked by technology and targeted by advertisers on the digital channels they use. So a lot of these changes that are taking place are based around user privacy and ad transparency, but these things do have big knock-on effects for advertisers and other players in the industry as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Pretty much how might advertisers be affected by all this, and what can they do about it to kind of make sure that they're ready. So we'll jump in. I think I'll start off with you, Therese, to get Google's point of view. So obviously one of the biggest upcoming changes to affect third-party cookies is that Google are dropping support for them in the Chrome browser, which means that advertisers are going to have a harder time targeting and retargeting ads in Chrome using kind of traditional methods. This has already happened in Safari and Firefox browsers, but apparently Google has about a 60% share of web traffic, so this is going to have a much bigger impact when Chrome does it. And as an alternative to the third-party cookies, Google's introducing a privacy sandbox, as they say, that will focus on more kind of interest-based targeting as opposed to using a unique mobile ID. So Therese, I know a lot of the technicalities how this is going to work haven't been kind of set in stone yet, but can you give us a broad overview of what the privacy sandbox is and how it will work for advertisers?
Yeah, so basically, from the beginning, the Privacy Sandbox has been an open initiative where we've kind of we've worked with the product web community to design and implement new privacy-preserving technology with the intention of preserving the vitality and sustainability of the open web. As you already mentioned, a lot of this is still work in progress. But what the Privacy Sandbox essentially aims to do is to create these kind of privacy-preserving and open standard mechanisms that will support the ad-supported web ecosystem, while at the same time meeting user expectations in terms of privacy and choice, and also, or specifically, I should say, addressing points along the lines of how to measure and report audiences, fraud prevention, and anti-fingerprinting. You mentioned the interest-based audiences, so that's something that's one of the concrete solutions that is in development now. It's called, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's Federated Learning of Cohorts, or FLoC, as it's abbreviated. Yeah. And this is basically a new way for businesses to reach people and still make sure that they're serving relevant content to users by, instead of focusing on personalization and unique users, it's targeting cohorts instead. So the user's privacy is essentially protected by the crowd. We've at the end of last year, after testing out the FLoC solution, we've done some experiments, and the results that we've found is that the kind of accuracy of these audiences seems to be at least 95% in terms of conversion per dollar in comparison to the cookie-based solutions. So yeah, so that's as far as
it makes sense
I know,
though, right? Like the fact that it's interest-based targeting actually, rather than unique mobile ID, if it's around demographics or certain user behavior, interest-based targeting has been kind of shown to be really effective in other areas as well. So it might not be surprising, but yeah, it's good to see. So how have you been kind of communicating this to advertisers, or how have advertisers kind of embraced this so far, or what stage is that at the moment?
No, so we're not quite there yet. The last I know is that we're aiming to release it in March, and then obviously we'll be working with the ecosystem to test as much as possible and get feedback on the performance and so on, so that we can continue to develop the solutions.
Yeah. And have there been kind of perceptive any advertisers that you've been kind of in talks with about it, about being like an early adopter, I suppose? Have they kind of embraced it, or what type of feedback have you been getting from them, or is it too early to say yet?
It's a little bit too early to say. I think come March we should have a better idea of the feedback we'll get from the market.
Okay. And what, when you say kind of interest-based or the cohorts, what type of stuff do you mean? Do you have like an example or something like that where it's around a certain industry or, you know, a certain type of cohorts, like you know, sports fans or, you know, beer drinkers or, you know, whatever?
Yeah, so it's kind of it clusters the behavior of users in interest groups or behavioral groups, and says, okay, these people who behave in roughly the same way, they seem to be generally interested in, for example, sports or whatever it may be. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it kind of in a way like the Facebook with the audiences, the kind of interest-based targeting, that you target somebody who likes, you know, using sports, because I'm a bit of a sports nut, but, you know, you target sports fans or, you know, football fans or whatever, it could be gamers or anything like that?
I haven't, like, because it's still early days, I haven't seen the full spectrum of what kind of audiences we are making available through this. But the idea is basically to cluster these users according to the behavior, and kind of cluster a larger segment of similar behavior.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's a nice kind of overview of the privacy sandbox and kind of the you know, an insight into the pivot from, you know, cohorts and interest-based stuff as opposed to kind of unique mobile IDs. So I think we can jump on to Romit now, and get a kind of insight from the kind of matchmaker point of view, as I said earlier. So you guys and your clients have been and kind of will be impacted by a lot of these changes. And it's something that's kind of been said that many of these updates might end up benefiting the big guys, you know, that control these platforms and have the end user relationship. So, you know, like Google for people that use the Chrome browser, or Apple for people that are iPhone users that use the iOS operating system. Even on the publisher side, so with large publishers like New York Times and Washington Post and Vox, that you know, have the resources and have built out these impressive proprietary first-party ad platforms. And that those guys are in a kind of strong position for this. So my question to you is kind of, how has MMP Worldwide kind of adapted to these changes and managed to kind of work and benefit from them? And how are you helping your clients to navigate these changes too?
All right. So to start with, like, you know, when initially the news came out that the third-party cookies were not going to continue anymore, there was a lot of confusion in this industry. Everyone were trying to think what's going to be the solution or what's going to happen next, and a lot of them were reliant or maybe dependent on big parties to, you know, to provide a proper solution. But what I believe is the solution for this, it is supposed to be more of a collaborative solution. Instead of benefiting only big players, it is supposed to be, you know, benefit everyone who is involved in this. So what we at MMP Worldwide are trying is, you know, to provide some collaborative solution so that everyone is benefited. Let that be advertisers, or let that be even our publishers. We never work like walled gardens, but our motto has always been, like, you know, to open for all and work with everyone. And that's the reason why our core value has always been our partnership with all the entities, like, including our technology partners, publishers, and advertisers. And that's the reason why we always aim to work with the best of the technologies available in this region. And, you know, using this best of the technologies, that sometimes, you know, we are able to I mean to say, like, there are certain publishers, there could be certain clients who do not have access to those technologies. So how we added value to them is by giving them access to such kind of technologies, and the publisher feel more empowered instead of, you know, being dependent only on a big player. So how we are doing this right now is we are working with our technology partners like Lotame, and Lotame has allowed us to you know, capture data in full capacity without even use of a single cookie. So what we are doing right now on a priority is to, you know, improve our match rate by using people-based graphing IDs. And with the help of graphing IDs and machine learning, we are able to identify different you know, digital interaction of a user, and we are trying to map them into one single user ID. So with the help, like these single user IDs, these can be accessed both through SSP as well as through our DSPs, which means we can run both direct as well as programmatic campaigns, or else for advertiser, they can have access to our first party data. And we could run some data driven campaigns for them. What we are also working toward is to have more and more strategic partnership with like strategic partnership in the sense of data sharing, so that along with our first party data, we also have a rich third party data, and we add more value to the data which we'll be offering to the advertisers. What we have also started is, we are insisting our advertisers more and more to test the impact of cookie-less campaigns. Basically, what we're trying or asking them is to, run a campaign on a direct whitelist. So basically, we are offering them a whitelist, we're offering them the first-party data, and we are asking them to measure the impact, how it is impacting the current scenario when they're targeting the, on the mass or maybe mass audiences, and so that they are prepared and well aware of how it is going to affect them.
And how is that? I mean, have you got kind of results for that? How these kind of cookieless campaigns have performed against the cookie campaigns, or what have you kind of seen from that?
In terms of performance, what we noticed is like, yes, the number, the reach, what we are able to attend at the mass targeting versus the reach at the whitelist is definitely, the scalability is different. But in terms of performance, it depends on the kind or the type of the nature what we are focusing on. Sometimes we have seen that it has been performing better, as well as sometimes there has been scenarios when the performance is almost equal as well. But most of the scenarios right now, what we have come across is it has, the performance is almost equal to what they are looking at with the mass targeting. Just the only difference is the number of reach and number of users, what they are able to attend or achieve earlier, that was much way higher.
Yeah. So it's just harder to kind of get in front of as many people.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's the reason why, yeah. So only to tackle the specific solution, what we are trying to do is have multiple out-of-box solution, or maybe multiple offerings to the client, so that they're able to reach as many users as possible. We are also trying to work towards few native solution, like native programmatic solution, which would be available through contextual ad targeting, and which could be basically bought through programmatic deals. So that's how we, that's how we're trying to adapt to this current situation to provide, a solution not just for the our publishers, but as well as to our advertisers.
Yeah, so I guess both of those two parties kind of are impacted differently by these changes. You got the advertisers on one side and publishers on the other. They're both kind of being thrown into this kind of new system. But that's encouraging to see that the results are kind of are not being impacted, in a negative way. And have you seen any of the clients that were involved in these kind of cookieless campaigns? What were their kind of takeaways from it? Are they happy with it, or are they kind of going to embrace this kind of cookieless world? Because I think, I like to think of all of these changes from the advertiser's perspective. What are they, or how are they adapting to this, or what is their outlook? Is it a positive outlook, or are they kind of worried? What's your general kind of hearing back from them?
What we're hearing the most is like they are trying different scenarios, and they're trying different options. Yes, the change is something definitely going to happen. Everyone is prepared for it. Everyone is trying to understand what they need to do next. But what we are trying to tell the advertisers is unless and until we are collecting the users or collecting the information who are willingly trying to share the information, and if we are collecting the data ethically, that means we are preparing for the longer run, and that means we are well prepared, and on a long run we'll be doing perfect. So right now it's more of a testing phase. It's too early to conclude anything, and that's what we are hearing most of the time. Like, different things we need to try, and different solutions or different offerings, whatever we have, which we need to present it to the client, to the advertiser.
Okay, great. So it's more about making sure you've got as broad a kind of batch of ways to kind of target, using them all together instead of relying on just kind of one way. Sure. Okay, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Roman. I think I'll jump on to Mala now from Huawei Ads. So hi Mala, Welcome.
Hello.
So you guys are kind of relatively new on the scene, and maybe some people might not know kind of what you guys do. So can you please tell us a little bit about Huawei Ads, what you guys do, what solutions you offer, and kind of how this fits into the whole ecosystem, in particular considering these latest changes?
Sure. Thank you, Robert. So as you said, we're relatively new. I'm sure a lot of people don't know that Huawei Ads exists. It's an exciting time. We launched the business early last year. So we've pretty much entered the scene into a very, lots of chaos happening as soon as we entered the ad business. With all of, I'm hearing cookie apocalypse, ID apocalypse, and not to mention we're not talking about COVID. So that's something no one predicted. But it's an exciting time. It's a new ad tech business, and our main, Huawei Ads, what it is at the core a mobile device ecosystem. We have our own proprietary technology that's built in-house to facilitate on the publisher side. We work with app developers, thousands of app developers who come into our app store, which is called App Gallery, and also facilitating the monetization from that perspective, but also talking about advertiser side. So buy side, we have agencies and advertisers who can come into using our platform and access a pool of smart users that is currently underserved. We do have our own identifier. So yes, there is a new one out there in the market. It's called OAID. OAID stands for Open Advertising Identifier, which is owned by Huawei. It's linked to the Huawei device. And this is all done and based on first-party data, all consented by our users. So yes, they have an option to opt out to OAID. It can be reset. It's a unique, non-permanent identifier. Now, what this means is because we have this platform and it's a gateway between, facilitating both the monetization, but also the marketing goals. So agencies and advertisers have, the challenge right now that we're talking about is with the third-party cookies going away and all of that, and consumer privacy being at the core of our ecosystem now. How can you effectively measure on your marketing campaigns? And we do this by our pool of first-party data, which comes from not just our third-party apps that are in App Gallery, but our own Huawei content. We have high-quality content, and we call this HMS. So HMS stands for Huawei Mobile Services. We have our own branded content, be it our own browser, our own music app, video app, Petal Search, which is our app search engine. All of these products, App Gallery being our app store, are accessible through Huawei Ads. And we're reaching over 700 million monthly active users, and our reach is on across the board, more than 170 plus countries. So the main proposition here is not to make this into a typical sales pitch, but essentially, your question on how we fit with this ecosystem. We're largely unaffected by cookies because we have a device ID. With the gateway of millions of smart users that are constantly, they're very loyal and engaged with our devices, is a pool of users that advertisers can tap into. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what Huawei Ads is as a business and how we enrich to scale that, especially this year.
Well, so 700 million users, quite a lot across
Globally,
175 countries. And what type of users is the kind of breakdown, in the region, for example, would you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, there is a breakdown. This is on a global scale. This is our reach for Huawei Ads. But more importantly, without going into intricate details, it's a gateway and an untapped inventory, I would say untapped territory of users that if advertisers are worried about not accessing users right now and measuring against them effectively for a return on ad spend, because that is the most important factor for advertisers. It's scale. So it's scale, but also measuring the campaigns effectively. How can you determine that a campaign that just run for a mobile marketer is, you know, measured against, and also they have their KPIs against this, and really highly driven performance goals. And we at Huawei Ads do this through our platform, but also the always on attention that we give to our clients to ensure that these goals are being met.
Okay, so yeah, I think that fits in really well in the whole kind of, you know, like the user privacy on one side and the ad transparency on the other side. It seems to kind of fit in well with the consensus around where this whole kind of trend is heading. Okay, yeah, that's great. That's a nice little intro to Huawei Ads for anyone who's unfamiliar with them. So I think, yeah, we've kind of touched on one point with each of you guys. So I'm going to kind of open it up a bit now to a couple of other questions. So these can kind of be posed to all of you guys, but I can jump in at the end. So this next question just revolves around this kind of ad transparency kind of topic that we mentioned or we touched on a little bit so far. So last May, a study came out on ad supply chain transparency from the ISBA. So that's the Incorporated Society of British Advertisers. But before Austin kind of rings the acronym bell there on me, they're basically a UK trade group representing 3,000 brands, and they put out this report. So basically, they tracked £100 million of ad money from 15 high-end advertisers. And the findings caused a bit of a stir when they came out. So the results were that only about half of the ad spend actually went to the publishers where the ads were shown. And about 35% went to the kind of matchmakers, as I say, which is fine, but maybe it's a bit higher than some people might have thought. And 15% was essentially untrackable. It just kind of disappeared into the void. And the only reason I bring this up is that this report seemed to kind of confirm some of the worries that many advertisers had around digital advertising. And you know, there's a lot of advertisers out there that have become a bit disillusioned. So seeing as a lot of these changes have been done in the name of, you know, as I said, UK user privacy on one side, but also ad transparency on the other side, my question is, you know, what would you say to advertisers to persuade them that these changes are actually going to improve the state of the advertising ecosystem? So I'll ask this to all you guys, but maybe we'll start off with Therese.
Yeah, so I think that especially because a lot of these changes that are happening are in response to what users actually want and need. These changes are in a way a big opportunity for advertisers and publishers who are very keen to become a privacy first business. I think if they're serious about developing privacy-proof solutions and focusing on first-party data and all of this, I think they have a very good position to, on the one hand, respond to the needs of the users, and also build a business that will thrive in a privacy-first ecosystem.
And great, and I think that you're saying it's kind of an opportunity for advertisers to maybe not go down that route of. I know that from a user point of view, I know that there's a bit of a pushback, you know, when you go onto a website and you might be shopping for, you know, a top or something, and suddenly you see it kind of, you know, retargeting you kind of across the web as you bounce around, and you know, sometimes there's a bit of a pushback from that. So I know that's just basic retargeting, but I suppose, you know, users are now becoming more aware of and conscious of these kind of methods that might seem, you know, I don't know, a little intrusive, I suppose. So that these new changes might be a way for advertisers to kind of embrace that kind of non-intrusive side of advertising, I guess.
Yeah, I just want to add in here as well. I agree with Therese's point. In general, there's just awareness, you know, that's come around for consumer privacy. But this is not new, is what I would say. Is, you know, we've been talking about since GDPR and also now CCPA has come along past few years. Cookies, I think it's very important to declare that we're talking about third-party cookies. If we're talking about cookies that have been deprecated, they were never a great technology. You know, cookies are an outdated piece of technology. They weren't compliant with privacy regulators. The whole thing about cookie syncing and match rates being low, all of this poses a lot of questions. And also, it wasn't good for tracking on a mobile device. So with the rise of mobile and your device IDs coming into the picture, what device IDs do is they have a holistic view of the user journey. For as long as a user has the handset to hand, they have this, they're going out, they're shopping, they're eating with their friends, they're going to the cinema with the device in their hand. So with this, cookie posed more questions, and users are actually actively rejecting cookies. They were blocking them, they were resetting them. And that brings us to question that and my question to advertisers would be that if this was, defended in the sense that because we had scale and we had a good pool of audience, but if you can't measure against this accuracy, then how can we defend cookies as a whole? Of course, we are now coming into an industry where collaboration is key. Users want choice and control, and that creates, if you're giving that transparency, I know we do this at Huawei Ads, we have a whole sheet on exactly what the data is being used for, allowing the user to make, judge based on that if they're happy to do that or not. And we have to do this in a language that they understand. It can't be another terms and sheet condition where you just tick I accept and move on, and then you're still not engaging with the ad. It's not effective and it's not efficient. So you're giving users choice and control, and transparency is building trust in that ecosystem. Okay,
fantastic. And Romit?
Yeah, in my view, what I believe the key is to make advertisers realize how it is going to benefit them. Because we are moving away from just targeting the unidentified or matching cookies to a matched user. So this is only going to make this much more. Basically, this is going to benefit more advertiser more, is because it seems to be a good sign for programmatic advertising buying. So the key over here is to to ensure that with the use of right technology and have proper measurement, or we could reduce the ad loss and ensure that we could reduce the ad fraud, and we could ensure that the advertiser is not losing enough budget. So this is something which we need to explain to advertiser, and that's how we can make them realize it will make as the technology progresses, it will make the programmatic ecosystem much more better place, or much more transparent place to buy the inventory.
So it does seem that there's a lot of upsides to these changes. I mean, if you just kind of looked at the industry, kind of the media companies, it might seem like everything's doom and gloom, but it does seem like that there's a lot of kind of plus points for advertisers and other kind of players in the space around this. It's not all going to be not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But yeah, I think that was a really nice overview there. I'm just going to jump in, I'm conscious of time. I'm going to jump in on one last question here, and it's just around any emergent new areas outside cookie-enabled browser-based ads that might kind of blossom if advertisers kind of start to think outside the box. So this could be anything like connected television, podcasts, smart speakers, gaming, anything like that, or even in-app ads. So maybe Therese, what do you think? Or anyone can jump in here. So it's just there's a whole new world of possibilities out here that are just coming online. That where do you think has a lot of opportunity?
Yeah, so you're actually mentioning a few of them there already. So like connected TV, for example, or linear TV, which is the kind of real-time TV inventory that you buy programmatically. And I think maybe that's a trend that, or not a trend, but an emerging tendency is to try and figure out how to do things that were traditionally offline, like for example, TV, in a programmatic way, be it only automating the buying, for example. The other thing, I'm slightly deviating from the question, but I would say that even though the question is around like new technology, the fact is that cohort targeting and contextual advertising, and also audiences types like Google in market or affinity audiences, these are still viable options in a cookieless world, even if it's in traditional browser-based ads. But yeah, I think linear TV and connected TV and these kinds of inventories definitely the opportunity to thrive.
So it's essentially the same type of concept behind it, you know, whether it's interest-based targeting, you know, no matter what channel it's on, whether it's you know, an ad that pops up in the middle of your kind of digital TV watching or in a podcast or whatever, and the same kind of concept behind it. Okay, great. So Mala, did you?
Yeah, I was going to say that the Internet of Things actually is what we're doing at Huawei. You know, the idea that, you know, traditionally when we were going back in time, the laptop or the PC came first, then the laptops, and then we moved on to basically adjusting that into a mobile device. And what we're doing at Huawei is the 1+8+N strategy. What that means is that you start off with your phone because that's the predominant or primary device that the user is using. Then we're branching out into, we call it the secondary portal. So the Internet of Things just means connecting your phone to your laptop, to your speakers, and then the Internet of Things, maybe your phone to your, you know, vacuum. I mean, you start hoovering with your phone. I don't know. So this is the expansion of what we're thinking, and gaming is a big industry as well. With COVID-19 coming, it threw mobile into high gear for the gaming industry, and it has a very obvious value chain, you know, value exchange assigned to that, and that's rewarded video. You know, show me an ad, okay, I'll watch an ad and I've got a life back. So lots of different options and opportunities, and now is the time for advertisers to start exploring them, not relying on one technology, and really make sure that they're holding on to their first party data.
Okay, fantastic. Romy, I'm just conscious of time here. Romy, did you have anything to?
Yeah, I believe I believe we covered most of the things where we're going to see the traction going toward. Definitely, advertisers would look into certain different options initially when there will be change happening. But what I'm seeing, the focus more towards is it will always remain to buy focus, or to buy everything on programmatically. So what I think is audio ad is something which would definitely we could focus more on. Or besides audio ad, what I also believe is in-gaming ad is something which might also we might see coming in this region. These are the two things which I can think of. Besides that, I believe advertiser might also shift his focus from the regular in-banner ads and the video to the rich media, or maybe out of the box solution, wherein they'll be able to show some personalized ads to on the right content to the right user on the right time.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity here, a lot of kind of food for thought for advertisers to kind of think of going forward. And I'm just looking at the time here, and I'm sure Austin is just in the wings, waiting to come in and kind of hook us all off. So yeah, thanks to everybody here who jumped in on this panel, and I think we can maybe switch over to the next panel.
Thanks a lot for that. You're right, I was waiting in the wings, but with some regret, I'm afraid, because I felt that this is a fascinating story, a fascinating conversation. I think that in many ways you touched on a lot of things, but there's obviously a lot more to say about it. Luckily, yeah, I saw that there were some questions coming up, and obviously we don't have time for questions, but do reach out to the speakers individually. And also, this is partly a plug for myself and partly to put you guys on the spot. Keep an eye on Campaign Middle East, because I'm totally going to be getting you guys to write more for me. Robert's written, and certainly we've had input from some of the rest of you as well. So yeah, do keep watching that, because this is a conversation that is not limited just to my four panelists that we've heard, but one that's going to keep going over the rest of the year. So thank you very much for that. Yes, we've now got, so that was Robert McGovern, digital strategist at Horizontal Digital, who was moderating the panel, with Therese Lundin, who is from MENA Platform, MENA Platform Manager at Google, Mala Kamran, who's Head of Advertising and Demand Solutions at Huawei Ads, and Romit Garhat, who's Associate Director of Programmatic at MMP Worldwide. All, as I say, I've got pages of notes and a lot of things, a lot of very interesting stuff there. I really liked how you looked at the sort of general, but you also touched on specific technologies, whether that's within your own sort of solutions or whether it's sort of wider things that are. So I think there was a lot there to take away, and do I'm going to put you guys on the spot and ask you to keep writing for me and contributing. So thank you very much indeed. And we're now, the second panel is coming in, and it will be just as interesting. It's going to be on creativity in ad tech. And I would try to sort of explain the details of this, but I've got 4 people here who are much, much better at doing that than me. So I'd like you just to welcome Ryan Garner, who is the Performance Director at Starcom, Daniel Young, who is the Yield, Inventory and Programmatic Director at DMS, Digital Media Solutions, and Beverly, is Beverly around yet? Beverly De Cruz will be, speak of the devil, hello Beverly. Beverly De Cruz, who is the Chief Brand Officer for Pizza Hut Middle East, Africa and Turkey. This is a great panel. It's going to be moderated by Mona Hassani, who's the Strategy Director of Wunderman Thompson, Dubai. So we've got a really good, wide sort of spectrum of expertise and insights here to look at creativity in ad tech. And I'm taking up far too much of your time. You've got much better things to say. So over to you, Mona.
Thanks, Austin, and thank you all for joining us in today's session. It will be good to talk about creativity, ad tech, and the future of our industry. The world of communication and media is an ever-changing world. New technologies, trends, and new behaviors keep driving innovation. And after a year like no other, it wouldn't be different. So I want to kick off with a contextual topic around the pandemic before we move into ad technologies and data. And having Beverly from a brand side, and Dan and Ryan from media, and myself from a creative agency, you will get a holistic picture on some key topics of our industry. We'll be sharing some perspectives on what are the technologies that have emerged during COVID-19, how ad technologies enable creativity, and how we as an industry will respond to the challenges related to data privacy. Starting with the impact of COVID-19, I guess we all have seen how that impacted brands in the way that they work, in the way that they communicate, and in the way that they have shifted some business, and as well in the emerging technologies that were raised due to the COVID-19. So it would be good to hear from you all, what are the new technologies companies and consumers are using that they weren't using before the pandemic outbreak? And Beverly, if you can start with this one, would be great to hear from you.
Sure, thanks, Mona. I think you can hear me?
Yes.
Amazing, thank you so much, and thanks for the introduction. So, you know, I work for Pizza Hut, and one of the big changes we saw with COVID had been the rise in digital ordering, the rise in delivery. And with that, a whole set of new technologies have come in. We've had so much more consumer data that we are now accessing. And we need to find ways and technologies that will allow us to use this data to drive more business decisions. So one of the big things we're looking at are CRM programs, but also marketing automation, and how we can take our data to the next level. Platforms that can allow us to manage campaigns, that can allow us to do personalization, segmentation, analytics. So a whole set of new tools are now being required in order to be able to do marketing as a result of COVID, because people are home, people are ordering delivery, and we suddenly have so much more access to data that we never did before. So that's our view from Pizza Hut, and we'd love to hear other thoughts as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Beverly. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so from an advertising perspective, I think during the pandemic, we saw a podcast boom. Programmatic audio increased massively from an uptake from a client perspective. Something that's very, very effective, being able to target audio inventory on a programmatic basis. From a broader tech perspective, then, Consumer Electronics Show was on last month. I think this is always a good barometer of what's new, of what's notable. Obviously, there was tons of pandemic-inspired tech there. A lot of it was around touchless activation, around gesture-based technology. Obviously, everyone's obsessed with not coming into contact with any services or any humans that they don't want to. A lot of robotics, so again, dedicated to minimizing unnecessary human contacts. And another explosive area, I suppose, was self-care, connected medicine. So I think what we're really seeing is that, you know, we're hitting fast forward on a lot of fringe technology that it might have been there, but not used on a really widespread basis. And now the pandemic's, you know, it's really been able to show how we actually need this tech as a baseline in our day to day. So yeah, that's it from my angle.
Yeah, I can't really say too much more than that. I think both Beverly and Ryan hit the nail on the head there. You know, from our standpoint as a publisher, you know, we've obviously seen a slight shift or acceleration towards more outcome-focused buying from clients and agencies alike. You know, that's naturally coming down, wanting more of a return on investment, return on ad spend, so a lower funnel focus. And so therefore it's sort of perhaps slowed down some of the more experimental budget creativity that may have been there before. But, you know, as Ryan correctly mentioned, it's advancing the overall number of devices, number of, you know, ways that we're actually going to be able to interact with consumers in the very near future once we sort of work every little nuance out. But yeah, the big things and big takeaways are exactly like what we're doing now. You know, the rise of the virtual marketplace or the virtual workplace, and, you know, interactivity at a distance. And then, yeah, anything, you know, RTA is probably a good example of one of those, you know, efficiency, smart city type things that people have adopted a lot more aggressively in these sort of times. So, yeah, exciting stuff for us to be able to convert that to a usable medium in the future.
Yeah, I think that's another interesting point as well. It's that beyond having new emerging technologies, we also saw many existing technologies as well becoming the focus of many brands. So there are so many brands that didn't have a focus on their digital touch points, and they are just understanding how relevant is that, and as well as creating some direct to consumer solutions. So that's quite interesting as well. That leads me as well to ask you guys. We have also seen the input data and behavioral understanding had in the creation of many campaigns during such period, with many creative campaigns really being inspired by new behaviors and by the new technologies or actually as well how people started to using more mobile or even other technologies during such time. So how else do you see ad technologies inspiring better creativity, and not only in the context of COVID-19, but in general when creating ad work and communication work? Daniel, I think you can start with this one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, well, you know, if we think of anything when it comes to, you know, the way that we're going to get in front of users and advertise, it's sort of a bit of a chicken and the egg. Do you use where they are and you go towards the eyeballs, or you try and drive them towards certain areas, you know, whether it's content or whether it's a device? So that's sort of one main thing that we've seen around how people are using their technologies. You know, Beverly alluded to it before, where people are a lot more connected on their mobile devices. They're in their homes. They may be a little bit isolated. So leaning into that kind of, you know, engagement is really important to be able to make sure that you're actually conveying the right message to the person in the kind of environment that they might well be in. So there's been some really cool use cases around, you know, sort of AR, VR type stuff, where people are able to be a bit more immersive in a sort of mobile device, using functionalities that may not have been as prevalent previously, and kind of tapping into the fact that, you know, everyone's sort of sitting around at home, at least for some period of time. And so you can increase that storytelling function with something that's beyond a gimmick. You know, audio is also there because the consumption of those mediums have been much, much higher. And you're able to really leverage a storytelling function when you're using something beyond just imagery. And again, you're sort of talking to, you know, pretty much a full share of the air type of arrangement there. So that's where, you know, we've been quite lucky there and successful with the likes of Ungami there, with audio really taking off and having a boom, yeah. But it also, you know, with everyone else in this sort of certain struggle, you know, brands and that are able to tailor their messaging to common experiences, something that everyone can relate to, so that they're actually may not be as personalized as they may have once been, but they're actually tapping into the emotional appeal that others are actually experiencing, and we are all experiencing. And that's where I think, again, the shareability comes into everything, whether it's tying in a single user on a single device, or tying in the shareability of what people are actually experiencing in other areas, you know, whether it's an outdoor campaign that was executed really well that then, you know, gets legs and a second life in the way that people are able to, you know, surface that elsewhere. It can have a wider and deeper impact on anything. So I think those are all avenues that have been pretty interesting over the last little while.
Sure. Yeah, so I can add to that, Mona. I think when you break it down, like there's a lot of tech in place for us to take inspiration from. Like you mentioned it yourself, the smartphone has been at the center of latest kind of ad tech capabilities. And now what we see is like ad campaign creative activated through very real interactions. Obviously, we saw the making of TikTok pretty much throughout the pandemic. You know, with a mobile, you're able to generate more tangible, more interactive experiences, more memorable experiences. So, you know, whether it's taking part in a dance, whether it's blowing into the microphone, which I saw Narcos do with the Netflix campaign, shaking the phone, swiping, using head movement recognition, blinking. I saw a campaign where people are chewing into the camera. It's all possible. It's all being done. Like Dan mentioned, augmented reality, incredible for clothing, for cosmetics, super important during COVID times as well, when people can't get out to the shops like they used to be able to. I think, you know, not just COVID, but rich media in general over the last 2 years, you know, it's come so far. Like one campaign big time stands out for me, and that's IKEA absolutely nailing it with an ad that users could actually assemble themselves. And if they did it, they got their hands on a discount. So for me, you know, there's a lot of tech there to inspire. I think, you know, brands need to be a bit braver. They need to take a bit more of a leap sometimes. And I think tech needs to become a bigger part of how campaigns are constructed from the beginning. So, you know, we need to remove any siloed campaign development. I think we need to make sure that client, creative, and media, they're all talking from the very beginning. And this way, smart creative can be very much in tune with ad tech capabilities. And essentially, you're designing key campaign elements around the technology. So you're not missing out on these creative opportunities that in most cases, they can't be retrofitted back to the tech once you have an established concept. And that's what happens on so many occasions where you have a silo where the client's working with the creative, then they go to media, and you know, you do miss certain opportunities that from the beginning you could take advantage from. So I think a workflow change could make a huge difference to inspire bigger, better campaigns that more people are going to talk about.
Yeah, I think that that's quite interesting when we talk about formats and technologies, but I also think that a way to start inspiring better creative work, and I'm interested in looking forward to see how behavioral technologies might guide the better creative concepts to be brought to life. So how actually understanding behavioral, and as you mentioned, how people interact with different touch points, how we can actually make sure that this is part of the initial thinking of every project, and I'm quite interested to see how behavioral technologies and the studies around that will help as well to deliver on better work. And talking as well about data and actually studying the process from the beginning, I think that one interesting question, and at least for me a very relevant one coming from the strategy department, is around data, and I believe that might help most people in advertising and as well marketeers. We know that in the past years, and especially in the past year due to COVID-19, the amount of data that we're having access, the amount of reports, studies, and numbers around consumer behavior, consumption, and so on, we have been having access to more data than ever before. So it's quite interesting to see how we will also be navigating this world, considering that our industry, it's a very much data-driven industry. So I wanted to ask from you as well, in a world where we have so much consumer data available, how can we leverage that in an efficient way to inspire better creative work? And Daniel, if you can start with this one again.
Yeah, sure. So I think obviously there's been a lot of data around there for a long time, and as you rightly pointed out, it's sort of ever increasing to the point where it's essentially a commodity, right? The reality is, though, is data, no matter how much of it you have, is completely useless if you're not segmenting and using it in the right way. If you're not able to make heads or tails of the data that you've got, you might as well just be, looking at circles in the sand. So that's where obviously the correct investment in not only the technologies, but in the human capital to be able to make sense of the data that is there, and making sure that you're using it to answer the questions or to, open the doors and essentially make more informed decisions. If you're using the data to, bring more confusion to the whole scheme of things, it's often, you're going to end up in a bit of a downward spiral, because you're just going to keep digging and digging and digging, and you'll never be able to make a decision. If you're keeping central to what your overall goal is, whether it's what you're trying to achieve in terms of a campaign objective in the short or long term, if you're using the data to fuel that decision-making process, then you can be more informed and actually come out with more actionable insights and activities. So, the best way to do that is, as I said, invest in the right teams, invest in the right people, invest in the right technologies, so that you can actually bring that, huge volume of data into really actionable nuggets that are going to help you make a better decision, that are then going to help you, make use of the different components that are all important in the actual, life cycle of getting a brand message to the right user, and then to undertake the right activities afterwards, which is exactly what Ryan was highlighting before around, getting the creativity into the conversation earlier. There's been sort of situations where creativity is essentially an afterthought. The plan's already been done, and then it's just a bolt-on or regurgitating the same stuff and expecting different results. The data that is telling us that doesn't work, yet we've been ignoring it. So it's actually time to listen to the data. That you need to build into it the functionality at that earlier stage. You need to make sure that everything gels together, and you can maximize the impact of your sort of activities without encroaching on the creepy, which is really where we ended up in this situation, is because we were never overly transparent with what we're doing and why we were doing it. So people always thought the worst. But yeah, I think that's the best way is to have the information there to drive your decision making and drive your actions. Actionability is key.
Ryan, anything to add here?
Yeah. I mean, I echo a lot of that. Like, I think, the problem is there are hundreds of thousands of data points out there. So trying to efficiently conceptualize and match creative is a massive challenge, right? So obviously we've got dynamic creative, which means, we can automatically generate thousands of different ad combinations, which that has just changed the face of display advertising and how it's performed and how it's delivered over the last few years. But even in that, there still has to be a human element when it comes to devising the decision tree, selecting the content, selecting the creative messaging, and all that can be overwhelming because of the amount of data. So tackling this efficiently, it's a big task for any brand, for any product owner, for any creative. And the main thing to avoid with your creative is trying to be all things to all data signals. And I think a lot of people get bogged down in that. So you need to identify the core data sets that actually mean something tangible to your business, right? So, what are the combinations that are leading to the most desired actions? What are the combinations that are leading to the most sales? That realistically you're able to match creative to. So what you need to do is develop fewer combinations of higher volume characteristics that lead to a high volume of actions. And that's the most important starting point. Then your creative becomes more effective because you're tuned into the most valuable audiences. And then you can iterate, you can adjust as your creative becomes more sophisticated. Maybe other audiences might show themselves as being worth pursuing. But the main thing to stress is that there has to be volume behind data sets for them to be effective and for creative to appeal. So I think that's the most efficient approach. And just going back to what Dan said as well about, people creating ads just like any other ad. I think that is one of the biggest things is breaking out of the category norms, so many ads just look the same, but taking that risk obviously can get you in a bit of trouble if it doesn't work, right? Because, not everything is going to be the next Compare the Meerkat. And if it doesn't go well, then your neck is on the line. But being distinctive works. It works a lot. And I think that's not what we're doing enough, unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's something that, like I say, it's a risky business, but if you get it right, it pays dividends.
Beverly, I guess it would be interesting to hear from you as well, coming from brand side.
Sorry, that mute button was not getting access. I was just reflecting on something Ryan was saying, which was brands being distinctive. Something we talk about at Pizza Hut is about being read, and we call it being relevant, being easy, and being distinctive. And if your work is not distinctive enough, then you're not going to cut through. And we use a lot of data to kind of create distinctive work. I love how you said Meerkat, Ryan. That was kind of the reference I'd given my agency once to say, that's the type of distinctive work we want. You either want to love it or you hate it. There's no middle ground on creative work. And the way we use data to determine creative work, we've gotten pretty smart. And I love how you say, get the data before you do the creative. That's hard. And as brand people, we always write these amazing creative briefs, and then we go find the media. And it's really hard to switch it around to say what media channels and then do the creative based on that. But that's something my team and I have begun to do. And our partners like Google and YouTube have been really helpful in this space. So for example, one of my creative campaigns, we started with YouTube and we started with Google, and we said, what are our top 10 search queries? What do people look for when they look at our brand? And, based on what they were looking for, that was a great guide to say where our creative work had to go. There was a whole piece about, we don't think your ingredients are real. We don't think what happens in your kitchen. For example, you use fresh dough. That gave us so many insights on where our creative had to go. And YouTube has been amazing, where as soon as our agency writes a creative idea, before we even go into shooting it, we take it to YouTube and say, is this going to have any chance for succeeding on your platform? And they co-create with us, which has been amazing. And then back to thinking about data. I mean, yes, we're talking about creative, but with so many sources of data, our marketing can get so predictive today. You can almost predict what consumers want from an innovation perspective, or what consumers want from, in terms of value, or what they want in terms of tech. And we do innovation in all areas, tech innovation, food innovation, and you can almost predict what consumers want by looking at how they buy today. So we are leveraging all the data we can. And I talked about a bit of automation in the beginning. How can we leverage this data to create systems that we can then read in order to determine what our future innovation pipeline looks like, not just advertising, but other meaningful things in the business as well. So, I'm super excited about what the future holds, where data guides our behavior. Previously, it used to be what I would like, or what my team likes, or what the partners that we're creating work for like, but creating work that's based in data gives you a better chance for success moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, Ryan, you said something very interesting. You still need the human element and thinking to actually translate this data in something relevant. Here at Wunderman Thompson, we do actually have a department only of data. I think that this is quite the future. We're going to start seeing more data analysts, data scientists incorporated into the strategy department and even into the agencies. But as well, another thing that it won't change. It's the human thinking and the impact that humans have on how they translate this data. So one thing that you're saying is that brands quite communicate the same, and that's because all of them are being data driven. They're all looking at the same data, and they are all translating the data in the same way, because they all get the same results from their reports. And here it's when we really need the human touch and the human creativity to come to life. So one example that I can give you, it's Burger King. It's one of our brands, and when everyone was aware and knowing that everyone was facing a pay cut here in the region, no one actually delivered or catered anything based on that. And Burger King, when they created their app, when we were launching their app, we actually created as well a discount that was equivalent to their pay cut, to their salary cut. So that's a way of using data in a beyond way of just knowing that people are facing such challenge and communicating in an empathetic way, but also creating something relevant for them. So I do believe that to be distinctive, you still need the creative thinking behind the data and using this data in a smart way. So that's quite interesting
as well. Like what you said, I mean, there's going to be similarities in how people read the data and translate that data. data, that is valid. But, there's one of the main aspects is like, okay, with category ads looking the same, is that people are reticent to take risks as well, so they don't really want to stick their neck on the line and be responsible for this crazy idea that didn't work. So it's one of the most difficult relationships or tasks to undertake, so that's why things like, obviously you don't want to keep going on about Compare the Meerkat, there's tons of other stuff like what Snickers did and things like that, but yeah, I mean, these are just brilliant ideas, but very risky because, if they backfire, like people probably are going to get fired. So that's the whole problem where if you're in a boardroom and you're going through a selection of ads and you're thinking, okay, well, if this looks like all the other ads in the category, well, what's the problem? But the problem is you're not going to stand out. You're not going to be memorable. You're not going to get that engagement with the audience. And it's just another ad. And that's it basically. So yeah, it's a very difficult tightrope to walk, so it's understandable when you do get ads that do look the same, but yeah, that's just the way it is.
And I think that as well, in contrast to all this data that we are having access to, and as I mentioned, more than ever before, having so much data, we are as well facing new challenges related to data privacy. So we know that data privacy are becoming increasingly important, and that might as well impact the way that we create personalized communication, the way that we target our audience. One recent example that might impact the creative work is the recent announcement of Google plans to phase out third-party cookies in Chrome. So what will cookieless targeting mean for our campaign effectiveness, and what are the data privacy challenges we might experience now and in the near future that might impact personalized creativity as well? And Ryan, if you can start with this one.
Yeah, sure. So obviously that announcement from Google, whenever it was, 6 weeks ago or something like that, added a lot of hysteria to the debate. Mainly it comes because the market share is just so vast from Chrome. April 2020, Safari, announced the same thing. You've got Firefox that did the exact same thing in 2019. Fewer people kind of spoke out, and I think one thing that's prepared us for this change is the introduction of GDPR back in 2018, and this was the European data protection shakeup, which already put the spotlight on third-party data in a very intensive way. So, like I say, it kind of prepared not just Europe, but the world for a big shift in data targeting. So with GDPR, you've got data ownership, consent, being a data controller, being a data processor. There's loads of different levels of liability, loads of different levels of complexity. And that meant that we embarked on cleaning this data landscape up. And what that led to and is leading to around the globe is first-party data becoming the most secure data with the least liability. And data partnerships then, which use first-party data from other entities, becomes vital for scaling audiences, for scaling opportunities. So in essence, second-party data partnerships will be the core of kind of taking strides forward. And publishers and display partners over the last 2 to 3 years have made a lot of gains and made a lot of progress in new data collection methods. So these are compliant, these are completely in line with the upcoming rule change, and what they are is based on consent, it's based on ID data and ID graphing, and it still enables audience collection and audience tracking and data gathering on a relatively large scale. So as an advertiser, there'll still be opportunities to scale activity. You'll still have opportunities to personalize creative, but removing third-party cookies, I feel it can be considered more as a data cleanse. There's going to be less actionable data, but publishers and data partners are doing their best to really gather as much data as possible that can be utilized from a partnership perspective. But the data we have will be more potent. It's going to be privacy compliant, probably more expensive. But, like really the brass tacks of personalization will still remain, so it's just going to be from a different angle, from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think from, something that you just mentioned at the end there that was quite important is I think too often people have just, it's been too simple to have all that data just accessible and just sort of throw it at the wall and hope something sticks. When it's going to be a little more in short supply, it might be more expensive. It's going to be more valuable. There's going to be more thought that goes into it. So then it comes back down into the actual overall construction of what you're trying to achieve is going to be more of, sort of front and center. From a publisher standpoint, we are in a position where obviously those players that have made these decisions to sort of do away with some of the clutter there and the mess that is the third-party tracking cookies, they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. They're going to have something that is adaptable and used for them. So I think in terms of an overall creativity side of things for publishers and independent publishers across the globe, there's going to be unification in some form of way that will materialize that actually aids in advertisers being able to navigate those environments as impactfully and as effectively as they can, perhaps those that are more off the shelf. And one of those ways is around the strengthening of first-party partnerships for publishers, individual and as a group, and portfolios like ourselves. And that will be, as I said, we investments in data scientists and teams and technologies that are able to do that. People are a lot more focused on that stuff than myself. But leveraging, both first-party deterministic data and then obviously their sort of second-party partnerships or even probabilistic data is still going to be there to actually strengthen up those coffers as it would be of actionable insights. And then in terms of effectiveness of campaigns, it might not just be, the same thing that we've been saying for years, which sort of clicks to something that should have been obsolete probably 10 years ago. But it should be, at the center of things is attribution to the nth degree. What is it that we're trying to achieve with this and how can we get there? And that's where, we've seen advancements a lot, not just in attribution beyond the last click, for example, but, actually down the line into, footfall attribution and actually getting into incrementality. So these are all things that, I know from a publisher portfolio like ourselves, we're investing in, and we've got guys there that are trying to advance that because it's something there that's far more actionable and measurable for the users. And it's sort of removed from, a lot of that clutter that is always there. But just because the third-party cookie and some of that sort of easily obtainable data might have been lost and cleaned up, it will draw focus down onto stuff that is truly important, that is far more accurate, far more actionable, and it definitely won't remove creativity from it because it's actually going to enhance creativity because you won't just be able to be as lazy as you possibly were, just sort of regurgitating, the same old creatives and just throwing it at an audience that you've decided off in 5 minutes that it's going to be relevant. There'll be a little bit more insight into that to try and achieve the overall goal, which is getting the right message out in front of people in a better way.
Not much more to build on what Ryan and Daniel said, apart from the fact that I lived in the UK when the whole GDPR law got introduced, and our biggest fear had been that we were going to lose all our data. But really, it was just a cleanse of what was more important. People that wanted to be communicated with, people that wanted to engage, stayed, subscribed, and those that didn't left. And so you really just cleansed the pool. And the result we saw was a better return on our ad spend or whatever money we were spending. The people that stayed were a lot more engaged. And all our fears of not being able to personalize or communicate weren't really real. Instead, what we realized was the people that got left into the pool were actually the right people who we wanted to engage with. So when I think about the measures being put in place, I just see it as a cleanse of those that want to be communicated with. They will give you your consent. And as brands and as creative people, we have to make sure that how we engage with them and do we make it worthwhile their time to be giving us that consent. You have to, not be, Daniel talked about not being lazy about creative. You almost have to show consumers the value and why they would want to give you consent almost. You have to earn it rather than just get it by default. So I think it will make things sharper. It will make, it'll get your message to the right people. And in fact, it will actually improve returns for the industry because communication, when it goes to people that actually want to see it, drives a lot better returns than when it goes to a mass audience and half the people aren't even interested or won't engage with the content.
That's like the crux of it in a way, right? Is so many people believe that the internet's free. The content they're consuming is free because they pay for their ISP or whatever it is, and they're like, well, why am I getting shown these ads? So it will come down to a value exchange. You know, I'm willing to give you my data, you know, at some extent of what that may well mean, in exchange for seeing content that is, you know, professionally curated and actually accurate and just not a bunch of crap that someone is created and made up, you know. So they will realize that, and then it will become down to it. People will opt in and see it. You know, it was years ago, you could even play around with that when you just switched off your cookies and you started to see really irrelevant ads. You know, as a user experience, that's not that great either. So most people, if they go back to that and start seeing stuff that is just completely nonsensical to them, they will probably then start to go, why am I seeing this? They'll investigate a little more, and then that's where they might make that choice of, well, I'm willing to pass this level of data in exchange for, you know, that level of sort of targeting. And that will be on a sliding scale, and it will evolve as it gets you know, more easy to opt in and opt out, and yeah. Be good.
Yeah, I think that what you said, it's exactly how we see that happening as well. I think that will even improve creativity. It will even improve the consumer journey, because consumers will be willing to share their data if used to improve their purchase and experience, their overall experience. That's what we can see from data, from reports, and even from data that we have analyzed. So brands that are able to really prove that they will be creating relevant content or improving the overall journey will continue to conquer consumers' trust, and I do agree that will also improve the overall creative experience and work that will create. So, getting to the end of our session, I want to ask you, what are you most excited about in the coming year? I would be happy to hear from all of you for this question.
Yeah, I can go first. I think, you know, there's so many things I'm excited about. I think the new world of tech is unfolding. And, you know, as a food brand, I've seen that, I talked about this earlier, that we saw an influx on delivery for our business, and that grew. But what that does is it gives so many other brands or smaller brands an opportunity to tap into this digitization or the world of digitization. So many more tools will now be accessible on how small, you know, 4-store brands or 5-store brands can enter this world of online ordering and have technology that they can access and leverage. So it's going to open a whole new world of business for smaller brands as well, which would be super exciting. I mean, as a food brand, I'm super excited about tech in the kitchen. If you think about automation and what you can make happen, you know, we always think about tech from a consumer point of view, but if you think about tech from an employee point of view, how you can automate, if you think about pizza making, to remove the error in it. This is not to replace people, but almost to make us more efficient. Instead of people, you know, scheduling labor, if a machine can schedule labor and can automate and figure out how you give deliveries to drivers that are still on their way, you know, it'll be so much more efficient from a kitchen perspective. And then I think lastly, I'm most excited about a borderless way of working. If you think about what tech has done today, if you think about just what we are doing right now, we are able to be, you know, there will be a world where you could have jobs sitting in Dubai and somewhere else in the world and working for companies from around the world where you don't actually have to physically move your family to actually go work. There are going to be so many more opportunities and such a big, rich pool of talent you can tap into should you be able to work from anywhere. And that excites me a lot.
Yeah, I think for the next while, you know, if we're talking about from a media standpoint, and that it's going to be, you know, doing what we've probably had accessible to us for a while, but just doing it better. You know, the sort of old, you know, walk before you run type thing is something that we don't need to jump on it just because it's new and shiny, but we can probably master what we've already had for a while, and then use these new technologies as enablers. To sort of take off a lot of that heavy lifting off ourselves and increase the efficiency and effectiveness. So that's always going to be exciting from a you know, sort of media usage and spending standpoint. As I highlighted earlier, you know, seeing the proliferation of the likes of you know, AR, VR is going to be quite interesting, using the functionalities that we have, and then tying it together with those other mediums. You know, obviously audio is something we've spoken about increasing in usage through this sort of time, which is great. But then anything in isolation is always going to struggle, and so therefore it's tying these together and using the technologies that we have to be able to get that storytelling message to the users across multiple mediums and sort of interactivities appropriate to the device. And then on a wider scheme of things, I think just seeing more and more of the sort of contactless ways of doing things, whether it's the smarter cities, whether it's contactless payments, interactivity with any of those kind of things, even the drone deliveries and things like that Amazon are talking about and everything like that. It's an interesting sort of concept to think about, because naturally it's going to open up a lot of other doors and opportunities to maybe we'll see flying outdoors ads in no time. So watch the space.
No, I think one part of CES as well was car technology. Like there's going to be huge changes on like car interiors, displays, again bringing in kind of gesture-based tech as well in the region. I think like Vision 2030 in Saudi, like building mega projects like cities from the ground up in 2021 or 2025 or whatever, harnessing Internet of Things, AI, carbonless tech, all these different technological approaches that and also learning from everything that's happened over the last year and beyond. That's going to be really interesting, to see what utopian city can actually look like when it's built in this century and the upcoming decade, say. From my perspective, like that's going to be an interesting angle to keep tabs on.
Yeah, I think that all that you guys just covered, it sounds very interesting. When looking into the advertising world and when getting to my own perspective on how that how creative work can become better in the coming year, I'm really interested to see how behavioral data and real data can actually improve creative outcome in order to understand where actually people are looking at in our communication, where our logo, which tone of voice we should use, and actually improve our communication through new technologies. Something that it's not really new, but something that I'm quite looking forward to see implemented. So with that, we have reached to the end of our panel. So thank you so much for everyone. And please do reach out to any of us in the panel today in case you have any questions. Over to you, Austin.
Thank you so much, guys. Again, there were some questions coming in there, and I'd encourage everybody to, we didn't have time for questions, so I'd encourage everybody to reach out to our speakers. You guys are fairly easy to find, track down on social media. In case anybody didn't jot it down at first, that was thank you very much to Ryan Garner, who's the Performance Director at Starcom, to Daniel Young, the Yield Inventory and Programmatic Director at DMS, to Beverly DeCruz, the Chief Brand Officer at Pizza Hut Middle East, Africa and Turkey, and to our moderator, Mona Hassani, who's the Strategy Director at Wunderman Thompson, Dubai. Thanks a lot for that. That was a really interesting panel. I think that all sorts running through it, but one of the things that I took out of it was the sort of narrative that it was interesting. Daniel sort of started off with some quite controversial things, saying in a way that maybe ads will become less personalized and also perhaps a little less creepy. But saying it's, and then Ryan was talking about how it can be dangerous to sort of go out on a limb with creativity. But I really liked Beverly's RED principle of relevant, easy, and distinctive. And then Mona brought in some good examples of like the work that you've done for Burger King. So I think that it looks like as we move forwards, as Adtech and creative, as Adtech develops, it looks like marketers, guys like yourselves, will be making the data have slightly less data. Maybe we will be making it work a lot harder, which will only make for better ads, and that you'll be using to sort of drive up more consent, and you'll get better engaged consumers. So I think that's a really interesting narrative. I do encourage anybody who's interested in this to reach out to you guys, and also to keep following Campaign Middle East at our website, the magazine, podcasts, webinars like this. And hopefully I can twist some of your arms to write for me again. I know that you've all got more to be said than we could get into that. So also at Campaign, we've got a couple of reports coming up on Ramadan and on Saudi Arabia. So I know that that's going to be a real hot topic at the moment. So do keep following us. And I'd advise everybody to sign up to our newsletters, at least skim them when they come in, because it'll also tell you not only what's going on the website and the magazine, but also how to get involved. So thanks again, guys. And also thanks once more to our sponsors, Digital Media Services, DMS, MMP Worldwide, and Huawei Ads. You heard from, not only did they make this possible by supporting us, but they also, you heard some phenomenal expertise that came in on some of the panels there. So I don't think there's much more to say, except thank you once again. I think this has been an absolutely fantastic start to the year. We talked about some really interesting stuff between the two panels. I think that we've probably got the conversation started at just the right time at the start of the year. And hopefully this will get everybody thinking, get everybody talking, and sort of raise the bar a little bit throughout the industry. So I thank you very much indeed, and look forward to seeing you all again soon and seeing you at our next event. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you. Take care.